back to my channel. My name is Holly Starkey, fantasy story editor. I edit all subgenres of fantasy. So in today's video, I want to continue on my world building series, and I wanted to talk about magic again, and I want to focus on how characters use magic in stories. So for one, there are dozens and dozens of ways that characters can use magic in a novel. So I'm not trying to say this is these are the only ways that it can be done. But when you look at all the ways that characters use magic and you boil it all down, it really comes down to three different ways that people use magic in stories. Well, I shouldn't say people, characters, because you can not have to be just people using magic in stories. So the three ways that I have, and I listed down here, are through objects. Like the object alone has the magical ability. The object carries the magic. The second way is with the person. The magic is contained solely within the person. Sorry, I may have touched my microphone, but I didn't muffle it. So the second way is the magic is contained within the person. The third way is that the magic is within both. So you have a combination of magic within an object and magic within a person. And I just encourage you to kind of look at, maybe your favorite fantasy shows or your favorite fantasy novels. And when you think about how characters interact with magic or use magic, I think 8 times out of 10 is going to come down to magic solely within a person, magic solely within an object. To kind of give you more of an example of what I mean, I'm going to go through a couple of examples to kind of show you more of what I mean by that. So in the first example, I have magic that is in an object. So you have Octavia. She lives in a world where magic is passed down from generation to generation through a magical item. And only certain families have access to a magical item. And of course, the families that have these magical items are very powerful and very wealthy. Octavia is from a family that does not have a magical item, so therefore no one in their family can do any magic. But Octavia hears of a legend of a wand that will give its user the power over fire and water. And Octavia, who is desperate to have magic in her family, sets out on a quest to obtain the wand. So in this situation, for Octavia's story world, magic only exists through an item. Like, the magic isn't within any person. The only time a family or anybody can use magic is if they have this magical item. And so that is just one way you can show magic in your story. So the second way is that magic is only within a person, like only in that bloodline. So for this example, we're going to have Ebony, who is from a magical family, is admitted into a magic school. And when she gets to the magic school, she needs to choose a magical conduit. And she decides to choose a flute because the most powerful witch that ever lived chose a flute. And Ebony really wants to be a very powerful witch. And so let's say, for example, if Ebony left her flute and someone came up behind her and picked it up, but they didn't have any magical blood, that flute would just be a flute for them. It would be able to do nothing but play beautiful music. Well, only if the person knows how to play the flute. If they don't know how to play the flute, then it's just a beautiful instrument to look at. But the tool, in this case, this example is a flute, only performs magic if the user has magic within them. So it's just a conduit for magic. It's a way to focus your magical energy. But the flute itself alone, if someone does not have any magical blood, it can't do anything. I see this a lot in a lot of fantasy novels. I think this is kind of a new trend that I'm noticing, where you have people who have magical blood, and only people with magical blood can perform magic. And they don't have to be a witch. It can be, when I say magical blood, you can be a vampire or a werewolf or a shapeshifter, anything like that, but the magic has to be within you to be able to do anything magical. So that's the second way. The third way, as I said, is a combination of the two. So for that, I have, let's kind of combine a couple different examples. So let's say Cassie lives in a village near a magical school. And this magical school only admits people who come from a magical family, so they have magic within their bloodline. Cassie is really obsessed with learning magic. She thinks it's fascinating, but unfortunately she wasn't born into a magical family. But Cassie hears of this legend of this wand that is said to give whoever uses the wand magical abilities regardless of heritage. And Cassie is very excited about that. She sets off on a quest to obtain this magical wand. And then her plan is when she has this wand, she's going to try to gain admittance into this magical school and pass herself off as someone from a magical family. So in this story world where Cassie lives, magic is almost always through the bloodline. But there are certain instances where someone who doesn't have magical blood can perform magic with an item, but those items are rare. Okay, so that is a way to combine both of those elements. Of course, there are many ways that you can do that. You can have, for example, let's say you have the Grim Reaper as a character, and let's say the Grim Reaper has an instrument they are using, a sickle. Yeah, the Grim Reaper uses a sickle. And let's say the sickle is separated from the Grim Reaper. And maybe a human, someone with no magical abilities, picks it up and is able to use it to reap souls. That's a way to have the magic within a person and within an object. And you can have a magical object that can perform magic even without a magical person wielding it. But perhaps maybe whenever someone who has magic within them picks up this object, it amplifies the power of this object because now you have dual magical energy running through this item. So that is also another way you can have it. There are so many ways you can be so creative with this. There's like this, I don't want to say something as cliche as the sky is the limit, but it kind of really is. There's millions of books out there that do various variations on these three items. So again, you just want to think about before you even start writing your novel. I encourage you to do this before you even start writing your novel, to think about how people are going to use magic in your world. Is it going to be solely through an object? Is it going to be solely through the bloodline? Or is it going to be a combination of both? It doesn't matter which one you choose. All of them are okay. I believe in Harry Potter, and I keep mentioning Harry Potter because I'm still struggling to read book 4. Really struggling to read book 4. But in Harry Potter, as far as I know, the only people who can use magic are people who have magic within them, like it's in their bloodline somehow. They can't, like a muggle can't pick up a wand and do anything with it. And Pegasus, it's a little, magic works it works differently in that book. Pegasus is a book I spoke about in my video on prologues. It's an amazing book. I recommend it. So, and Lord of the Rings has combination of both, I would say. It has both. So you can have a novel that uses one or the other or all three. It doesn't matter, but you need to make that decision early on in your story. It really helps when you're kind of crafting how magic works in your story world, because once you decide how people use magic, whether they're using it through, an object, a person, or both, or some other method, then you can go into the details of, okay, so then how will they use magic? We know how they use it, but then how will that manifest? Does magic have to be played through an instrument for it to work? Do you have to have a wand to perform most magical spells? Do you have to have access to an element in the earth to use magic? I mean, there are all kinds of ways you can take it from there, but decide early on, how do you want magic to flow through your characters? Do you want it just flowing just through them, through an object, or through both? Also, something else to decide early on before you start creating your magical system is to set your magical limits. So I've done 2 videos about that, about all magic needs to have a price, all magic needs to have limits. Make sure you decide that too. Decide early on what will be the limit of magic, what will be the price of magic. Also decide how people will use magic. And once you've made those decisions, then go and start, crafting your story and, developing all your backstory and your story world and things like that. Because once you've made the decisions about magic, because if magic is going to be in your novel, it's got to be in there for real. No, you can't half do it. Okay, when you put magic in a novel, readers who go to a book that has magic in it love the uniqueness that magic brings. It's a way to escape the world they're in. It's making the impossible possible. So magic is powerful, and if you put it in a novel, fantasy readers expect you to go all the way with it. You can't half do it. You can't have this magic system half built and kind of fall apart halfway through. You need to really put all your effort into having your magic make sense within your story world, and that means setting those limits, setting the price of magic, and also how people use magic. That's very important because magic is just a huge part of fantasy. Not every fantasy novel is going to have magic as like a focal point, but there is magic. I would say there's some form of magic in every fantasy novel. And so if you mention magic in your fantasy novel, you're going to have to make sure you have it fully fleshed out. No ifs, ands, or buts. It needs to be, because readers are very clever. They will catch it. They will catch mistakes. They will catch inconsistencies. They will catch errors. And they will tell you that you will either get email or you will just read about it in a poor review. So you want to make sure you think about this beforehand. Think about setting your magical limits. Think about how your characters are going to use magic. And then think about how magic then will manifest itself in this world. Do you have to have a wand? Can you only use magic on a full moon? I mean, all these things. And whatever rules you set, make sure you don't break them. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. Again, my name is Holly Starkey.